Welcome to session 12 of Traditional Ghanaian Social Institutions. In this session, we would learn about the traditional modes of socialization. At the end of the session, you would come to understand the rationale behind socialization in traditional societies. You would also understand the ways in which traditional rites of passage constitute traditional mechanisms for socialization. Finally, you would understand the importance of socialization for both the individual and the society. According to Ruchek, socialization is the training process by which an individual, inexperienced in a given culture, learns about and acquires that culture as an aspect of his behavior. Leslie Larson and Gorman also define socialization as encompassing those processes by which an individual learns to take account of social order and to cope with it by some combination of conformity, non-conformity, avoidance, and conflicts. And so what we pick from these two definitions is the fact that socialization involves learning. When you take human beings, there are various arguments that go on to either justify the fact that we are born in a certain way, or the society in which we find ourselves is the one that influences us to become what we are as humans. We refer to this as the nature-nurture debate. That is to say, what has made you who you are? Were you born like this, or it is the society that has made you who you are? And compare a newborn baby to a newly born animal, for instance. When a baby is born, it needs some time to learn a lot of things, such as language, how to crawl, and then how to walk and how to run. All these take some time. Specifically, or let's say it will take about 1 year for a newborn baby to go through these various processes, to learn how to walk, to learn how to eat, to learn how to talk. It could even take a longer period. But for an animal, let's say a day-old chick, as soon as it is hatched, we see that it is able to come out and then start walking and try to fend for itself, of course, with a little support from the mother. Humans are not endowed with the instinctual patterns that some animals have. Rather, we have social capacities. A lot of the things that we do, eating, walking, talking, and the like, are learned. In the absence of socialization, we find that certain things or certain actions do not conform to that of humans. Let's take, for instance, studies of people who have not been socialized. A typical case is that of Isabel, which has been documented, and Jeannie. So you can just go onto the internet, Google those names, and read about them. These were children who were confined with parents who could neither speak, who could neither talk nor hear. For that matter, they grew up not learning any form of language. Apart from that, they could also not walk, based on the fact that they were confined in a small room for a long period of time. This tells us that as humans, socialization is very important to our general growth and development. What are some of the goals of socialization? Socialization helps to inculcate into members certain basic skills. It also helps us to achieve our ideal self. It also helps us to aspire in life. The need to go ahead in life is one of the goals of socialization. Finally, it creates an awareness in the individual of his or her social roles. That is to say, socialization teaches you that, for instance, as a child, you are supposed to respect your parents. or as a parent, you are supposed to train up your child in certain ways. And so it creates an awareness in the individual of his roles within the society. In traditional settings, the various rites of passage are seen as modes of socialization. If you would recall, in previous sessions, we have talked about rites of passage. By rites of passage, we are referring to, for instance, naming ceremony, puberty rites, marriage rites, and funeral or mortuary rites. All these rites serve as modes of socialization or modes of inculcating into members expected patterns of behavior. So let us start off with the naming ceremony or the outdooring ceremony. During a traditional naming ceremony, the newborn baby is outdoored on the 8th day. This is based on the fact that before the 8th day, the newborn baby is not regarded as a member of the living community. As such, if he should die before the 8th day, a funeral ceremony is not performed for the child. It is believed that the child was just passing through, and for that matter, he does not deserve to have a funeral celebration. It is therefore important that after the 8th day, the child is properly welcomed into the land of the living. It is a form of socialization, so that for any child who does not intend to stay, the child would learn that until the 8th day, he or she will not be welcomed properly into the land of the living. Again, during the naming ceremony, we find that the child is introduced to alcohol and water. In typical traditional societies, pito, or any local drink, is used for this purpose. This is to teach the child the virtues of truth and falsity. That is to say, we are telling the child that let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. If you see water, say it is water and not something else. If you see alcohol, say it is alcohol. For that matter, the child is socialized or taught to know the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, and the like. Another form of socialization given the child during the traditional naming ceremony is the name that is given to the child. Usually, the child is given the name of an elderly person or an ancestor. The name is chosen based on the character of the person. And so you may be named after someone because your parents want you to emulate the lifestyle of that particular elder or ancestor. And so the name serves as a socialization for the child because he is being taught that live your life according to the way in which this person lived their lives. Live a good life, live a virtuous life, be hardworking, and conform to the norms and values of the society. After the outdooring ceremony, socialization continues. All members of the family, both the nuclear and the extended, are expected to socialize the young one into the norms and values of the society. As such, if a child is found doing something wrong, any member of the community can correct him or her. This is not so in modern times. You realize that in modern times, you dare not correct somebody's child, lest you risk getting ridiculed or insulted for doing so. In traditional settings, the upbringing of a child is the responsibility of all the community members. And so anyone at all can punish the child for wrongdoing or can teach the child the do's and don'ts of the society. This form of socialization is also done through proverbs and folk tales. You remember any famous Anansi stories that you heard while growing up? These Anansi stories were told in order to socialize the young ones into the do's and don'ts of the society. And so we find that these stories tell us the repercussions of deviant behavior and the rewards that you get when you conform to the norms of the society. Girls are socialized differently from boys. Girls are socialized into performing female tasks such as cooking, cleaning, sweeping, whereas the boys are socialized into male tasks which demand more energy, such as fishing, hunting, farming, and other tasks of that nature. As the child grows up, there are still other rites of passage which serve as socialization for the child. Paramount amongst them is the puberty rites. This rite is performed exclusively for girls by most of the ethnic groups that are found in Ghana. It is a rite that is performed at Menak, that is to say, when the girl child experiences her first menstrual cycle, then she qualifies for this rite. It shows the readiness of the girl for marriage. This rite teaches the virtue of chastity before marriage. This is because in order to qualify for the rite, you should be a virgin. And so this virginity is tested before the rites will be performed. In testing this virginity, sometimes in some communities, the girl child is supposed to take a ritual bath in a snake pond. This is specific to some Ewe communities. And so if she should take this bath and the snakes do not devour her, then it signifies that indeed she is a virgin. However, this ritual bath is not mandatory. If you feel that indeed you are a virgin, you can go ahead and take the ritual bath. A successful ritual bath earns you more blessings from the gods and the ancestors. Another way of testing the virginity of the girl child is to use a boiled egg. A boiled egg is tried. One tries to insert a boiled egg into the vagina of a girl to see if her hymen has been broken or not. This would either confirm or refute her virginity. The girl child is then confined for a period and taught how to behave as a full-grown woman in terms of how to take care of her home, her children, her husband, and the like. And so these are some images that tell us how the puberty rites are performed within the traditional Ghanaian setup. Now let us move on to the marriage rites. Like I said earlier, puberty prepares one for marriage. Once the puberty rites have been performed, it means that the girl child is ready for marriage. And so she is paraded through the streets of the community such that any potential spouse can come forward and ask for her hand in marriage. Before the marriage, however, she needs to be confined for a period of time. Amongst the Ewes, she is confined for a period of 6 months. During that time, she is trained and taught how to behave in marriage, how to care for her husband, her children, and her home. In addition, she is taught important virtues such as humility, obedience, and fidelity in marriage. Amongst the Southern Ewes, for instance, there are certain hexes of chastity that ensure that the married woman cannot engage in extramarital affairs, and these are taught the girl to ensure that she remains faithful in marriage. Examples of such hexes include the Gbolomagba or the Adema. This is a herb which is planted at the entrance of the house, such that if a married woman should engage in an adulterous act, she cannot enter the house after the act. There is also the psychic padlock, which prevents any man from having sexual intercourse with the woman. Finally, we have the fiatekli. which is another example of a hex of chastity amongst the southern Eves. This works in such a way that it exposes the adulterous couple by keeping them locked up in the sexual act. That is to say that after the sexual act, they are not able to separate, and for that matter, they will be caught. These are some of the ways in which the young woman is socialized or taught to remain faithful in her marriage, to be obedient to her husband, and to be humble as well. After the ceremony, the marital bed is usually laid with a white bed sheet. This is the final show or the final proof that signifies that she was indeed a virgin before marriage. That is to say that after the marriage has been consummated, we expect that the white bed sheet will be stained with blood, and that shows that indeed she was a virgin before marriage. If one is able to achieve this feat, it brings a lot of honor to the girl and also to her parents, and it ensures that she would have a successful marriage, which of course involves childbearing. Puberty and marriage rites are oftentimes exclusively for females. Males do not partake in these rites. Why is that so? It is basically because of the biological makeup of the male child, which makes it difficult to determine their readiness for puberty. That is to say, boys do not menstruate, and so we cannot say that this is a physical sign to show that they are ready for marriage. Of course, in some communities, there are ways of determining a man's readiness for marriage. For example, his ability to cultivate a particular plot of land shows that, yes, indeed, he is economically capable of running his own family. In addition, the virginity of a male child cannot be proven due to their biological makeup. For these reasons, puberty rites and marriage rites are often exclusively for females. Now let us look at mortuary rites. That is to say, funeral rites. Funeral rites are a form of socialization for the living. Funeral rites are important because they ensure the smooth transition of the dead person's spirit to the land of the dead. Without funeral rites, the spirit of the dead person will be hovering between the land of the living and the land of the dead. We say it's a socialization for the living because it isn't everyone who undergoes these rites. You need to qualify for a funeral rite. How do you qualify for a funeral rite? It is determined by the kind of life that you have led. If you lead a good and a righteous life, if you do not commit any serious offense, such as murder, adultery, rape, robbery, or if you do not break any serious taboo, and if you die a natural death, then you qualify for this funeral rite. And like I said earlier, it is important that these mortuary and funeral rites are performed for you because without them, your spirits will be hovering between the land of the living and the land of the dead. And so these mortuary rites ensure that members of the community lead good and exemplary lives and go according to the norms and values of the community in order to avoid their spirits being perpetually trapped between the land of the living and that of the dead. Finally, let us look at the importance of socialization. Socialization enables the individual to be accepted within the society. It also ensures that the individual will grow and develop. It provides some form of emotional satisfaction. If you are able to go according to the norms and the values of the society, definitely you will feel at ease and you will be at peace with yourself and with other members of the society. It enables the individual to also fit into other cultures and prevents the individual from engaging in deviant acts. Once you know the do's and don'ts of the society, you would not engage in deviant acts. Socialization is also important because it enables the individual to adapt to social changes as he is able to understand and appreciate social values. Finally, we say that socialization enhances the attainment of future goals. In summary, in this session, we have looked at the various traditional modes of socialization. We have seen that socialization is indeed very important to every human being. We are not born with the norms and the values of the society. No, we need to undergo a training process in order that we will be able to go according to the norms and the values of the society. And for that matter, we can fit into the society and we can live comfortably within the society. In traditional settings, socialization is done in an informal way through the various rites of passage, namely the naming ceremony, the puberty rites, marriage rites, and finally, the funeral or the mortuary rites. We have also concluded the session by looking at the importance of socialization to the individual living in a society.